You're listening to the Femtrepreneur Show, and this is episode 17. In this episode, we're chatting with Rebecca Tracey of the Uncaged Life, and we're talking all about running your course business as a nomad, how to run in-person retreats, and how to know what to invest in your business at different stages. Hey guys, it's Mariah.
And I'm Megan, and we are so excited for you to hear this interview. Rebecca opened Uncaged back in 2011 and has worked with hundreds of coaches, consultants, and freelancers to help them uncage their businesses and their lives. She helps online business owners create solid business foundations and can often be found working with no pants on, which I think is hilarious. And we're so excited, so let's dig in. Hi, Becca. We are so happy to have you here today. We already told our audience a little bit about you, but I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Hello. So I'm Becca from the Uncaged Life, and I work with mostly service-based entrepreneurs who are trying to get their businesses up and running online so that they can be location independent, travel or stay home with their kids, or whatever the reason they want to be uncaged, they want to be able to work online. So I work with businesses who are at the very beginning, like baby stages of business. So people who are really trying to nail down their target audience, their business message, all of those foundations that make up kind of the core of your business. So then they can then go on and start to create courses and sell programs and stuff like that. So I'm kind of that like first step.
That's awesome.
I love that.
What did you used to do before you started your business?
Before my business, I did many things. I would say that I was starting a nutrition business as a health coach. So we call it a nutritionist here in Canada. But I graduated from a nutrition school and was kind of combining nutrition and life coaching and kind of going down that route. At the same time, I was working for an online wellness company doing their blogging and their social media and running contests on Twitter and all that stuff. So I was kind of getting to learn online business while I was starting this totally separate business. Realized I hated telling people what to do when it came to food. So quit that business and kind of slowly veered in this direction. I ended up coaching a lot of my nutrition friends about what they wanted to do with their careers. And so it kind of developed into what I do now.
That's awesome. You know, your blog and website was one of the first that I ever found when I went to start my online business. Like, I was like, I need to learn about this stuff. And yours was one of the first I found. And at the time I was living in my camper and I was living in my van, kind of off and on. And I was like, oh my gosh, hope. Like, I was like, this girl's doing it. Like, it was exciting and inspiring.
Yeah. And especially because I'm not sure when you found it, but I might have also been living in my van at the same time. I'm not sure on the timing of that, but I started Uncaged when I was living in a van traveling for 8 months.
Totally. I want to ask you a million questions about that. So why did you start your current business, and like, how was the transition? You know, a lot of our audience is in a 9-to-5, or they're trying to like get their business off the ground. What was the transition like in terms of going from like regular people to totally entrepreneur full-time?
Yeah, it was probably a little bit different for me than for a lot of people because I didn't have a 9-to-5. I shouldn't say never. I had one for 6 months and I did not last very long in it, but I was never coming from like a full-time career and having to make a huge transition. But it was interesting going from the mindset of like, oh, I think I want to start my business maybe someday to actually doing it. That was the biggest shift for me, I think, was just really getting my head around, okay, you're actually doing this. So what does that mean? How is that going to change how you spend your time and where you spend your money and like what your priorities are? So that was a really big shift. And because I started when I was in the van, I had a really nice kind of buffer time where there was no pressure of like, oh my gosh, I have to pay my $2,000 rent in Toronto. It was like, I just need gas money. Like, it's cool. It's lots of time to play around with it, which was really, really nice. And for people who do have full-time jobs, I always recommend like starting really slowly and building it up. To, you know, it doesn't have to be like, I quit my job and I'm starting tomorrow, because that's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. So I love that buffer time.
I think that's really interesting because I did that too. And I was like, I need to have the lowest, like I remember living on $100 a month and being like, I need to have the absolute like lowest expenses in my life so that I can afford to go all in my business. And I'm very much like you, like I didn't have a 9-to-5. I never had a regular real person job because I'm completely unemployable. But I do think that like having if you can, and I also feel like a lot of people can't do this, and that's fine, and a lot of people aren't willing to do it. But for both of us, it was the right decision to be like, how can I minimize my expenses? I'm willing to live in my van for 2 years in order to be able to have the time and space and resources to go all in my business. And I think that's an option. I mean, not a lot of people are going to go for that, but like, guys, like that is what Becca and I both did. And it's like kind of an interesting way to start out and be like, I need the lowest, like you said, like I wouldn't have been able to do what I did if I had $4,000 a month in expenses. I did it because I had $100 a month in expenses, which gave me a lot of breathing room.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a van. You can go to, a small country in Central America and hopefully, fingers crossed, get good enough Wi-Fi that you can start things. You can downsize, there's a lot of options and ways to get started like that.
As someone who I did the more traditional route. I had the 9-to-5 for a few years and slowly built the business on the side, but it made it so much harder. Like you were saying, Mariah, that because I had a full-time income and I was living to my income level at that time, it was like I had to build a business that made the same amount before I could make the switch. Like it was really, for me, it made it a lot harder. It made it take a lot longer. So I really admire and respect the people who do take it down. Like, okay, if I want to make this transition happen sooner, my living expenses need to be lower. And I think that's such a smart way to do it.
I think if you can.
Yeah, if you can. And I would say that my story wasn't even necessarily like I want to live in this van so my expenses are less. The plan was to go off with my boyfriend at the time and go on this big road trip. And I was like, I don't want to wait 8 more months to start my business. Like I need to do this now. Like if this is something that I want to do, like it has to start now because I don't want to wait anymore. And I know I'm only going to be doing it part-time because the whole point of the trip was to travel. And so, it was an interesting balance between like, I really want to be working on my business, but I also want to enjoy this like crazy adventure that I'm on. And it was nice to actually be able to say, okay, you're going to work 1 day a week on your business. And that's what I did for 8 months. Wow. And that was enough to build it up to the point where I got back and I had clients. I didn't have to have another job. It was, more or less self-sufficient. I wasn't making a lot of money. But it was enough to get by. And I'd kind of had that slow build.
So let's talk about this. Let's dive into this, especially because we've both done it. And I feel like we have, like, when I find someone that's like lived in their van, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can connect to you. Like, you know things about my life that like no one else would understand. Like, about the life where you're peeing in a bottle every night, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that life. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I peed in a bottle every day for like 2 years. Like, no big deal. And I think it's like so interesting. And I think a lot of people in our audience, especially since they know my background, and I think it gets like glamorized a lot. And I know the other day, Megan and I were at a workshop and we were talking to this awesome girl who was like, I want to move into a camper and like travel in my RV. And I was like, oh, I used to do that. And I was like, for everything that's awesome about it, there are so many things that you like that I hesitate to tell you the reality of some of it. And it is awesome. And obviously we both like love doing it, but I do think there's sort of like the reality, like pros and cons. So let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about so many people in both of our audiences want location independence and traveling full-time or part-time. But what are some of the logistics of actually making that work?
God, it's so different now because because when I started it, that was the dream, right? I always said I want to be able to work and travel at the same time on my own terms. And it was like, well, you better put your money where your mouth is and like go off and do it. So it was kind of what I'd always wanted to do. I don't have that same desire anymore. Let's put it that way. Or I don't have the desire to do it in the same way. So when I started, it was great because it was like, I'm traveling and I'm working and like, it's all great. But now I prefer to travel. I prefer to travel when I travel and work when I work. And I try not to mix the two too much. It's nice that I can still keep up with my work when I'm gone on a trip, but it's not my preference to be kind of working full time. Like I could never be full-time nomadic, like, trucking around with my laptop, working from, whatever cafe on any given day. Like I could not do it because number one, Wi-Fi, right? We're all like striving towards online businesses here. Crappy Wi-Fi is a seriously limiting factor. You cannot get things done. You cannot take client calls. launches go to hell. Like everything just gets messed up if you don't have good Wi-Fi. And sure, there's lots of great places you can travel that have good Wi-Fi, but to make sure it's reliable, isn't always that easy, surprisingly. Even in the US, like on my road trip, I was only in the US, and there were places like Wyoming doesn't have internet.
No. And you don't have like reception. You can't even like tether either, because it's like you can't get anything. Like I was going to say that was the biggest thing for us, was like it was so hard to find actual Wi-Fi, and I could not do any calls or any webinars. Like I just had a course, so I didn't have to do client calls, but I could not do any webinars. I couldn't do any live video. Like that was just out of the question with campground Wi-Fi. Like that was just not ever going to happen.
Even now I'm planning, my launch for my program for March next year. And so I'm kind of working backwards and figuring out like, when am I going to be doing my webinars and all that stuff. And I know I'm going to be traveling a lot in January and February. And it's like, it's seriously stressful trying to figure out like when I can do the launch, when I won't be away. Like I need to be home in Toronto now to do things like webinars. It's just like a rule that I've made for myself, because it's irresponsible to hop on, to have someone lined up to be on a webinar with me and then get on and like my connection doesn't work. It's just not professional. So I've kind of had to learn to just build travel time around like launches and around work time now. Yeah. Which when I started, I never thought I would do. It was like, I can do it all from the road.
Totally.
But yeah, you can't.
No. And I think that's like we both ended up making that choice. Like I know for me, I was like, I remember like we had been living in the van and the camper for so long. We have a camper that we tow, and then we have a van and we were living in them on and off, like switching back and forth. And some of them, like, I remember just telling my boyfriend, like, I can maintain the business as it is, and it will just keep going at the exact same rate, and I will just never do anything different or new or push myself. But I was like, if I really want to grow a business, like beyond what it was already doing, I need a space to like set up a studio. I need a space to like set up for webinars. I need to be able to have like really good Wi-Fi. And it was the reason why we stopped living in the van, because I was like, I can't grow a business this way. I can maintain a business totally, but I can't like scale a business living in the car.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
That's fair.
Well, and I think what Becca was saying too, I feel like you get more when you are at a place where you kind of separate travel and work. I feel like you can enjoy both more. Like if I was trying to work the whole time I was traveling, I feel like I wouldn't enjoy the traveling as much as I would if they were separated.
Yeah.
And it becomes the thing of like that, like you said, I did the exact same thing once a week. I would work like one day a week. I would be like, I have to find a place to work. So it's like, that like one day a week, you have to like find a cafe, test their Wi-Fi. Like it's kind of, you're like basing everything on like, I hope that this one day works out, that I'm going to go to Barnes and Noble and like set up shop for like 8 hours.
Or McDonald's, which was McDonald's. My go-to, because they have Wi-Fi everywhere in McDonald's.
Yeah, totally. Barnes and Noble and McDonald's. Those were our places. Yeah. No, it's just like a kind of, I think it's awesome. And I think everyone should like try it, and everyone should do what they want. But it was so hard. It was like there's so many things that you're just like, you won't be able to do. Like, I think that's a great point. Is like, don't expect to be able to do webinars if you are going to live in your van or a camper. And I'm someone who just sucks at planning. Like I just don't, planning in advance for me is like just my worst nightmare. But I have to now, because if I want to travel and I also want to launch my courses, I need to make sure that I look at my calendar. Literally, I'm looking at my calendar now through the end of 2017 and going, okay, so here are the months that I can travel. We're making it sound like this is like, oh, woe is me, I have to plan. It's like it is not the worst problem to have in the world right now, especially. So I think it's still, what's really cool is that, building an online business like this gives you the freedom to actually be able to create your schedule however you want it to be. So travel as much as you want, stay home as much as you want, do both, do neither. This summer I didn't work for 4 months. Like I did nothing. And business surely didn't grow. But that was a choice. That was a really conscious decision. And like, I had the freedom to make that choice, which is just, such an amazing place to be. Yeah, absolutely. No, I really appreciate that. Do you have any advice for other people who are thinking about living that sort of nomadic, either whether it's in an RV or a van or something like that, like living that sort of work travel life?
Yeah, I think just really, first of all, if you feel the need to do it, like go and try it. You know, you'll make all the mistakes. You'll figure out all the bits that suck about it on your own. You know, like it's not gonna be the end of the world. But be really conscious of what you want your schedule and your time to look like. So like if you are traveling, you know, if you want to just travel, then go travel. You know, if you want to go travel so that you can start your business on the cheap, that's a different mindset than like, I'm just going to buy a round the world ticket and I'll bring my laptop and maybe my business will start. So just being really intentional about like which one you're doing when, I think can help a lot. So when you're in work mode, you're not feeling guilty because you're not out, you know, exploring the amazing place that you're in. And when you're out exploring, you're not feeling guilty that you're not working. So just being really clear which time is which.
I think that's a really, really good point. And something I did not do before I left. I was just like, oh, like, I'll figure this out. And I had to like write an actual book while I was like staying in campgrounds. And it was like, oh, I was like, I didn't set aside any time to actually do this. But I was like you, I like hated planning in advance. I was like, it was very difficult, but I think it's good. I think it's like you said, if you feel like you have to do that, like you'll learn so much and you'll also figure out what you ultimately want. Cause for me, I thought that was going to be my life forever. Like I thought that I was 100% like, this is my entire life. Like until I'm 70, this is how I'm going to be living. And after the first couple of years, I was just like, I can't, like, I don't think I can keep showering in public showers every day. It's getting too gross.
Take the business fully out of it. It's still being nomadic is still challenging for reasons, you know, completely unrelated to trying to run a business. So the people who do it, I am like, good for you, because I could not. Like I'm such a homebody now. Like I want to have a home base. I want to be able to come back to my home and then like go off on shorter adventures and always have somewhere to come back to. But the beauty of this is that like you can create it to look like whatever you want it to look like, and you can change your mind. Right. So we both were like, this is what we want. Oh, wait, no, it's not what we want. And we had the freedom and flexibility to be able to change it, which is the best part about all this.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I know it's something that so many people are curious about. And I'm always curious about hearing about other people's experiences with it too.
I know.
I'm like, oh, what was the worst thing that happened to you? Like, that's what I'm always like, oh, what was the creepiest and worst thing that happened on the road? Because I have all my own stories.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I really appreciate that. So you're also a pro at putting on profitable retreats. Little segue right there. Why are retreats a good reason? This is something Megan and I have been talking about so much, is because we did our first live event. It wasn't really a retreat. It wasn't like a tropical location. It was in Boston, but we did our first live event, and I just had no idea what to expect. And like, we learned so much from it. We want to implement it in our business, but we do not know how to do it. So what do you think is sort of, you know, why are retreats a good thing to add to like a course business model in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different reasons why people run retreats, but I think, you know, the reason I hear most often is like, you know, people love to travel. So they want to be able to create travel experiences in their business. And there's something really amazing about connecting with the people that you serve. We'll call them your clients, in like an in-person way in an amazing place. Like it's just totally different than ever, you know, coaching someone on the phone, or doing a one-on-one with them in like a hotel conference room. Like it's so different taking them away to this like magical place, even if it's a local retreat, even if you're in like a cozy cabin in the woods, or, you know, like a house on the beach, or you're in like Costa Rica or Mexico or somewhere awesome. It's pretty cool to be able to create an experience like that for people. And so there's so much that goes into it. Speaking of like writing course or launching courses and retreats, I'm writing a course right now, like literally it's almost finished, about how to run retreats. So this is like totally on my mind. Retreats are not one of those things that are super, super profitable. So they can be profitable, but they're not, I think, what some people think. And there's, you know, you hear people out there going like, oh, like make 6 figures with retreats. Well, okay. So the way that you can do that, just to debunk that myth right off the bat, is, you know, you get people onto a retreat that's certainly not a 6-figure retreat. You know, it's like whatever the price of your retreat's going to be. And then you eventually build those relationships with those people, and then you sell them into higher end one-on-one coaching packages from which you might make 6 figures. So, you know, there's kind of this myth out there of like, oh, make a full business by running retreats. And it's not quite how it works.
It's like speaking, like conferences are like that. It's like get you in the door for like couple $100, but then it's like you'll be upsold on the $10,000 mastermind at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not even convinced that retreats are the best way to do that. If we're talking about sort of more like boutique style coaching retreats where like a life coach or a health coach or a business coach might take a group of 10 to 15 women off somewhere for the week and, you know, do some workshops, do some activities. I'm not even convinced that that's the best way to like enroll a bunch of high paying clients. You might get clients from it, but I think there's much easier ways. So I think the retreat experience itself, you need to be running retreats for the experience of itself versus hoping that there's going to be some like magical 6-figure business coming out of it afterwards.
I love that.
I think that's something we were touching on this, Mariah, when we did our first live event. Not that we were doing it to make money, but I think we walked away from it realizing to have a good live experience, it costs money. And not only to have it like the venue, the food, the snacks, if you have a meetup before, but like even the team traveling, you know, it was just this realization of how, they're more expensive than I think we had thought. So I feel like if you tell me if I'm wrong here, if you want live events or retreats to be part of your business model, you really have to like budget in that expense and like bring that extra revenue in from somewhere. Like it's not necessarily always that someone's ticket will reimburse the expense for it, or would you just price it more expensive?
Yeah, live events, like kind of a conference style event, I feel like are a little bit different than retreats, just because and again, it depends on how many people you want at the event. Like you can easily have a live event or a conference style event with a lot more people, whereas managing like 40, 50 people on a smaller, like on a retreat is like, for like a week long is like a lot. But there's definitely ways that you can profit from retreats without having to sell people anything else. And it's really just a matter of budget. It's about doing your due diligence, finding a venue that's going to meet your budget requirements, making sure that you're really clear about everything that you're going to need to spend and figuring out what that at person cost is. And then playing around with the numbers of pricing. So figuring out, you know, what's realistic to price this retreat at. Like I want to make X amount of profit. I'd have to price it at this amount to make that. Figuring out how many people you'd need in. So it's just like a numbers game, but it's definitely possible. To give you some real numbers, because I get asked this question all the time. And I did a bunch of research before writing my course, because of course I have my own experience with running retreats and I know how much profit we make. But I wanted to see what it was like across the board. So I think I ended up getting responses from about 25 different retreat leaders, all in the kind of coaching industry. So like life coaches, business coaches, health coaches, energy workers, like service-based folks. And the amount of profit that they made after expenses ranged from $500 to about $8,000 per retreat. And of course, like it always varies. You know, this is just like an average of the numbers. I would say that the average was somewhere around like $5,000 to $6,000 in profit after all expenses are paid, including like your flights there and your meals and like everything said and done. You got a free trip. But it's not a trip. It's not a vacation. Yeah. Plus you came out with $5,000. Is that amount worth the hours that you put into planning a retreat? It depends.
Right. Depends on your business.
I wouldn't want to calculate the hourly wage. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, to be able to have that amazing client experience and really be with people one-on-one, to get to have a travel experience yourself, and to come out with some profit, like I'm happy with that. I think that's a pretty good job to have. Some people aren't, and some people are happy just doing it kind of like breaking even and just being able to connect with people. So I think it's really important to get clear on like why you want to hold the event or the retreat before you dive into any of it.
Well, I think that's one of the things we dealt with is like we did our live event and it was like 13 people. So it wasn't like a big event, but it was like 13 people. It was like a workshop, and we were kind of trying to just it was for our previous students, so we didn't like charge anything extra. So we knew we weren't going to like make a profit on it, but we knew that we wanted to like try it out, and the experience itself was so worth it. Like I don't care that we lost a lot of money. Like we lost a lot of money on it. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars putting it on, and we didn't make any profit from doing it, but it was like so cool to connect with people. I think if you're coming from it with that perspective of like, this is meaningful and this is something that makes me feel good, like you'll feel successful about it.
Yeah. Yep. And now your next one, you can make those decisions of like,
Right.
do we want to have more people? Do we open it up to just, to anyone, or is it only for clients? If it is for clients, do we need to charge more and maybe bump up the price of what we charge them initially to cover the cost? So then you can make some of those decisions, from a more informed place.
Well, and that's one of the things we're testing is like, how much did it actually cost when all was said and done? And it was very expensive. And it was only for one day. And like, if it was like 3 or 4 days, it would be even more. And so we figured out what we would need in order to just break even. And it's like a very high ticket price. So do you have a sort of guideline? Like it was, we needed to charge $5,000 per person in order to even just break even for how we were doing it. Like, do you have a sort of guideline of like, what is an acceptable good like ticket price for a retreat where it's like 10 to 12 people?
It absolutely depends on like who your target audience is, what you're doing on the retreat. If you're running a business retreat where you're going to like actually create people's courses there on the retreat and like create a launch plan for them, and there's a huge return on investment, you charge more for that. Whereas if you're like a life coach running more of an experiential retreat where you just want to get together, a bunch of amazing women and go have an amazing experience together, they're not going to spend $10,000 most likely to go and do that. So it really depends on your target audience. I think what's more important is realizing or understanding what you can change to reduce that gap between, how much it's going to cost you and what you would have to charge a participant. So things like, possibly booking a less expensive venue, not including all of the things that you wanted to include. So if you were going to do like a longer 7-day retreat, like what if you just did 5 days? Having it somewhere where you and your host maybe don't have to fly into. So that there's no travel expenses for you. Bringing more people. So scaling it, if you're making, $500 a head and you bring 10 more people, like there's a good chunk of change. Or pricing it higher, obviously. So it's really just looking at like which piece needs to shift so that the price that we want to charge that is still going to feel in alignment. Because, I don't think the answer is always like, well, just charge whatever you need to charge to make the amount of money, because then you end up possibly excluding a lot of the people that you wanted to come in the first place. So yeah, it depends a lot on what your niche is and kind of what like a reasonable experience like this should cost for them, which of course, we all know is like so arbitrary. But I'm thinking of yoga retreats specifically because I've been looking at yoga retreats for this winter for myself, just because I feel like going on a retreat. And I started looking at prices and they're all over the map. Like I went on one last year for about $1,000 Canadian, which is like very cheap. And was looking at some this week that are like $2,500 US. And I kind of have a price point in my mind where I'm like, that's reasonable. Like that's what I would pay for that. And then, I see some price points and I'm like, whoa, really? For 5 days? So, what are your clients expecting an experience like this to cost? And again, showing the value of it, I think is huge as well. Like how you market your retreat and sell it, just like launching any course, you have to show the value in it. It's not just like, here's a retreat, here's a price, come. You have to do your due diligence and actually marketing it properly too.
So I have a question. How do you have courses too, correct?
Yeah.
So how do you blend them? Like, is the retreat connected to the course? Are they like the same offer? Are they totally different? How do you do that?
So the main retreat that I run is one that I do in Belize. And we've actually changed it this year, but I'll talk about previous years. So previous years, it was pretty much the same content as what I teach in my main like group program that I launch 2 or 3 times a year. Obviously, it's not all of the content because we only have 5 or 6 days to do it, but it's sort of those core foundational bits. And that worked really well because it was really clear what type of audience it was for. There was clear deliverables, like you're going to come on this retreat, you're going to get an amazing jungle experience, we're going to do yoga, but also you're going to leave with this, this, and this in your business. So it was really easy to articulate what it was and who it was for. The downside of having it so specific was that it was limiting in who could come on the retreat. So we had a lot of people who were like, oh, I really want to come, but like I'm further along in my business. And we're like, oh, sorry, not for you. Right. Which looking back, it's like, oh, well, we really, I wonder how we could have created something that was more inclusive. So we're actually changing it this year to do it a little bit differently. So my retreats are not necessarily something that you need to be a client already to come to. And you don't necessarily have to sign up to be a client afterwards either. They're kind of like a standalone item. Where it sounds like something like what you guys did, it was for people who were already your clients. And so there was no additional cost. It was included in the fee of whatever they paid you for, whatever the other service was.
Yeah. So do you have like, when you, in terms of like your annual like launch cycles, how do you kind of split up launching your courses versus launching the retreats? What does your kind of annual launch calendar look like for 2017 with all these different pieces?
Yeah. Well, with retreats, you need to launch them in advance, like way more in advance than you would with a course, because people need to plan, right? So like, I'm like, hey, come to Belize with me for a week. People need to know well in advance. So typically, in terms of planning retreats, I always recommend planning 6 to 12 months in advance, because you need to book your venue. You need, like, there's so many little pieces to put together. So to give you an idea, my Belize retreat's happening in January 2017. And we launched it. We opened up registration for it last month, September or October. So the retreat's running in January, and as soon as I get back, my next course is launching. So it's definitely like, you don't want to be doing them super back to back, because for the course launch, it's only about a month-long launch cycle. So I need to physically be here, and I can't do it when I'm in Belize. So I had to actually push back the date that I prefer to run my course, because I'm going to be in Belize, and again, crappy Wi-Fi. But then I don't, I only run this retreat once a year. So it's not like I have to slot it in to other times during the year. The next time that we would run it would be next January. So January 2018. So then it would be kind of the same cycle as this, launch it in like September. And retreats are funny because the launch period is longer than something like a course.
That's what I was going to ask, is like how,
for like a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah. I usually recommend having, like, really hustling it for the first 4 to 8 weeks, kind of during what you would call like the early bird price. So doing more of like an actual launch for it then, and then you kind of just, people trickle in, right? So it's not like a course where you're like, well, the course is starting next week. The retreat's probably still 3 or 4 months away. So you can still leave it there and mention it to people, and you'll get people definitely last minute going, oh my gosh, I just found this, like, are there still spots? So I usually recommend like a strategic launch when you first open it up until the early bird ends, and then you just kind of let people trickle in. And then once it's closing registration, then bumping up your marketing a bit more for that period too.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, this is so eye-opening because, like, we were talking about doing this kind of stuff, and we're like, okay, so we'll do it 4 times a year, and we'll enroll for a month. And it's like, well, because we're so like in like the course launch system, and this is something totally. It's like you said, it's like if you're not planning it a year in advance, and it's like, and at that point, you're doing it once a year. You're not doing a retreat every quarter, unless that's all you do.
Yeah, a one-day live event might be a little bit different, but definitely if you're planning a retreat, even a weekend retreat, like, people have families and businesses, like, they need to plan, right? So a lot of times, yeah, people just need to know well ahead of time, because there's other vacations that come up, like they need to slot it into I had people in, I think, February this year email me and say, hey, I just want to know the dates of your next retreat, because I think I want to come, but like, we're planning our family vacations like a year, like that was literally like almost a year ahead. It's like, I don't know the dates yet. Yeah. And some audiences might not need as much planning time, but definitely for your sanity, just being able to, first of all, filling the events, right? It still takes work. I think, I've got some tricks for how to fill it more quickly, but it still does take work. It's such a high ticket, very specific item. It's different than filling an online course for sure.
Yeah. And it's like you said, the fact that it takes place at a specific date is something we've always noticed is like, people want to come, like, there's hundreds of people that wish they could come, but like they already have something going on that weekend, or they can't get childcare that weekend for whatever reason, and it's just kind of a thing of like, even there's so many people that will want to come, but knowing the dates in advance makes all the difference, which is something we did not do.
I ran a retreat in the summer once, which I wouldn't do again. Summer's like, everyone's on vacation, everyone has other plans. It was hard to fill, like we pulled out all the tricks in the book and like we didn't fill it to capacity. We still ran it. But it was a super small group. And so it was just a good reminder of like, oh yeah. So for something like, a longer retreat where you really want to take people away, like people love to travel in the winter when it's cold out. Summertime is not necessarily the time when people are thinking about taking themselves on a retreat. So keeping in mind like major holidays and people's like typical schedules too.
Yeah. We have that even with our courses in the summer. It's like people are like, oh, well, my kids are out of school for these 4 months, so I don't have time to work on the program. And so a lot of times like we'll notice a decline in the summer months and then like it picks back up in the fall and the winter.
Yeah, which I think is pretty standard for most businesses. Like almost all of my colleagues in August, we always chat and we're like, nothing's happening. Nobody's buying anything. What's happening? Oh my God, we're failing. And then September comes, we're like, oh, it was just the summer, right? Like we need to just remind yourself. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So in terms of like launching your own courses, a lot of our audience is sort of in that first stage of launching their first course. I always like to ask people about their first launches, experiences, and sort of just like, I know we've been kind of jumping around from all these different topics, but how did you launch your first course? What were some of the things that worked and didn't work? And what would you tell someone who is about to launch their first course? They're probably kind of nervous. What would you kind of give someone for advice about launching?
I'm trying to think of what my actual first course was. So my first the first thing that I really launched that was more than just like a one-on-one service was actually when I was living in the van. I ran a group program. So it was kind of a course, but it was like an online group program. I don't even know I think I just emailed my email list. Literally, I filled it with 8 people. I still don't even remember what it was about. But I would say like the first true course that I created was it was probably my group program, Uncaged Your Business. But in terms of like an online course, my course, Hey Nice Package is like kind of the most significant one. So that was like actually creating the content, developing it into an online course that was just going to be delivered, without me being involved in coaching people. So I definitely didn't do anything crazy for launching it. I used to, and up until last year, God, Mariah, you'd shake your head at me if you knew my business. Up until last year, I never really launched anything. I had a really strong, very engaged email list and Facebook group. And I literally would just put out an email and fill things. Like I'd put in an email or two and mention it in the Facebook group and programs would fail. So I never did really in-depth launches. I'm doing that now that I'm really trying to scale. So with Hey Nice Package, first thing was that it was a beast to put together, way more than I thought. I said, I'll just bang this out and then, throw it in a PDF or whatever and sell it to people. And it was months of writing and editing and then designing, and a ton of money invested in creating the sales page for it. Way more money than I thought it would have cost to put a course together. So that was an interesting learning experience. So once I started to realize near the end of creating the course how much it was actually going to cost, I started to set some goals for okay, how much do I need to price this at and how many do I need to sell to actually get those back? And I still didn't do anything major. I had a pre-sale for it. So I sold it to the interest list before I actually launched it. So that helped, make some of the money to actually pay for designing the course. I think I made enough to actually cover those costs with the pre-sale. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And then I literally just sent it out in email. So that was it.
I totally bought that course.
Yeah, it was
I remember when your sales page came out, my little business group of friends at the time were all like, oh my gosh, have you seen this sales page? It's gorgeous.
For Hey Nice Package? Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it was the first time that I'd really put a lot of money into creating something like that, which was scary, right? Because I was it was and probably compared to a lot of people now, I didn't spend a ton. I think I probably spent maybe $6,000 creating it.
That's a lot.
Which at the time was a lot.
That's more than I've ever spent on a sales page or creating, necessarily creating a course.
Yeah. This course is delivered in a PDF with links out to audios and videos and worksheets and stuff. So, it's page by page design for 100-page PDF. It's not a cheap job. So yeah, that was the first experience. I think definitely the reason that it did well and the reason that I still sell it, and I launched it multiple years ago, I feel like it stood that test of time, is because I really had tested the content before I put it into that format. So I had done the work one-on-one with clients. I had brought it into my group program and kind of tested it in a group format. I'd done it a couple times as a workshop. I was I wonder if this works workshop-wise. So I turned it into a live workshop and did that with a couple people. Once I actually got all the content written out super roughly in a Google Doc, I had 12 people go through it. So 12 people who would have been the ideal person to buy it, go through it and read it, edit it, add their suggestions, give me a price range of what they thought I should price it at. And that was invaluable. That was like the best thing that I ever did. And I do it now for anything that I put out online, because their feedback made the course so much better. Like huge gaps that I just didn't even see were missing in the content. They filled in for me. And so the course became way better and at a way higher price point than I actually was thinking of charging for it, which was really cool. So yeah, I felt really confident then investing in like the design and the copywriting of it, because I knew that it was like the final course. I know it's probably due for some updates right now, but it wasn't just like, oh, I hope people want to buy this. Like I knew people were going to buy it because I knew my audience really well and I tested it. So I think that's like the most important piece. And I'm sure you talk about that when you talk about your course launching as well with your clients.
Yeah, but I really like what you said about like having a couple of people look it over in a Google Doc. I read your email the other day and I was like, this is something I can get down with, because I don't believe in creating a full course and then giving it away for free to beta testers. Like, I don't think that makes sense. I think if you don't make people pay for something, they're not going to get anything out of it, and you're not going to get anything out of it, and you're not going to get real feedback. But I like that you're showing people like, hey, here's my outline. What do you think about, what are the gaps that are missing in this sort of like rough outline? It's not like you're delivering your full premium course for free.
Yeah. Well, with this, it was basically my first draft of like, here's all of the content. It does not look pretty. It is not copy edited. It's like, boom, in a Google Doc, like here's 75 pages of content. And I got people who were interested in, like, they're people who would have bought the course anyway. So I knew that it was like the right audience to be reading through it. And I also put a stipulation that I needed it back within a certain time frame. And if they couldn't get it to me in that time frame, I was going to invoice them for the price of the course.
Ooh,
which was actually
smart.
Like the first time that I did that. And I was like, oh, I don't know if this seems like really cheap or really weird, but I really, like you said, I really wanted people that were going to take the time to go through it, because it's a big job. Like the reason that I don't charge for it is because the amount of time that they put into going through it and giving me comments is like hours and hours of their time. And of course it's helping them, but it's helping me, I would say, more than it's helping them. Like, sure, they get the course, they save themselves a couple $100, but for me, it's like absolutely invaluable. So I felt totally okay not charging them. Again, it wasn't like I gave it to 100 people. I chose 10 people who were perfect for it to go through, and we had an agreement that they would really put their time into it as an exchange for getting it for free. So that feels really good for me. And they were amazing.
So smart.
Like
I feel like putting that expectation and urgency on it too, like it does create that motivation that I feel like is lacking if you don't put it there. Like the motivation to do it, and the fact that you, like you said, can profit from it if they don't take that opportunity to go through it and give you feedback.
I also give them really specific instructions on what to do, on how to give me feedback. So I'm not just like, oh, read it and tell me what you think. I go through and I actually, like, in the doc, I'll highlight things and say, like, here was my thinking behind this. Like, does this make sense? Like, what would you add? I give them questions at the bottom of the doc that I want them to answer. And then I send them additional testimonial questions after. So I'm really clear about, like, here's what I want you to do. And here's what, like, I don't want you to go through and copy edit it. I don't want your grammar feedback, because, like, that's the most annoying thing, right? It's like, I want feedback on the content. They're like, oh, there should be a comma here. I'm like, don't do that. Yeah. And it's great. I totally understand also not wanting to give it away for free. I think it's a totally personal decision. I just was like, I can't make them pay for something. I'm asking them to do so much work.
I love the way that you frame it, though, is completely different than other people I've heard say, oh, just give it all away for free and then charge for it later. I think you did it really strategically. And I think that makes the biggest difference. And you knew that with 10 people, like you said, it's not 100 people getting it all for free. It's like these 10 people are going to give you valuable feedback that you'll make back in thousands and thousands of dollars later on.
Yeah. And it was the right people, the people who so I've got an interest list of a couple hundred people who have said, like, yes, tell me about the course when it comes out. So I emailed that list. I said, hey, here's the deal. I need people to review it. You need to be this type of business owner. You need to be on this kind of timeline. Here's the parameters. And I got a ton of responses back. And the ones that I chose were people who were in my community. Maybe I've worked with them. Maybe I've just kind of chatted with them in a Facebook group before. So, like, we have a little bit of a relationship. Or the other ones who maybe I didn't know, in their email back, they were like, here's why I would love to review this. Here's why I think I'd be a great reviewer. Like, I could tell that they weren't just like,
they're putting
give
in
it to
the
me.
work.
Yeah. So I could, I kind of just went with my intuition about, like, who was going to put in the work. And it worked, because every single one of them was stellar.
That's amazing. I love that validation technique. I think that's something new that we haven't necessarily heard anyone else talk about before. And we've had so many people come on this podcast and tell us about the way that they validated their idea. And all different strategies and all different ways of doing it, but I've never heard that particular one. I think that's super valuable. Yeah, that's awesome. So we always like to we always like to ask our guests, because I know it can seem from the outside like everything is rosy all the time, but we always like to ask, like, what are some of the things that you are struggling with in your business right now? Like, what are some of the things that are happening today in your business that you feel like you're struggling with, so that we can all kind of relate to that?
Oh man. The biggest thing for me right now is really trying to figure out how to build a team in a way that's going to work for me. So I have an assistant. I have like a customer service person. So that kind of like a tech VA person, and then kind of a customer service VA. But really just trying to figure out like who else I need on my team, and also making sure that I want to actually be building a team. Because I think that it's, when I get to the stage where I'm at, where I'm growing and I'm scaling, and I used to just do so much of it by myself and I can't anymore. It's really tricky. It's been really tricky to find the balance of like outsourcing and also still being involved in my business. So this year was really interesting. I ended up hiring kind of like a project manager, like operations manager, to basically come in and delegate, to make a plan and delegate. And I paid a crap ton of money for it. And it was interesting to see how it shifted how I work in my business. So like I could slack off a lot more because like somebody else was taking care of things. But it all came at a cost, right? So now I'm at the place looking back at the year going, okay, was that worth it? Is that the way that I actually want to work with a team? Do I want to be that removed from kind of what's going on? So I'm really struggling with, and then there's the little pieces like having a designer that's kind of just my go-to person, but not being able to give them like full-time hours. And so trying to negotiate that, figuring out whether I need, to have an ongoing like coach and mentor, or whether I just need to be hiring someone strategically when I need help. So it's just been like, I have no idea. I still don't know. I'm just kind of experimenting, and I'm not shy to spend money in my business. So I spend a lot of money in my business. A lot of what I make goes back into the business. So it's all kind of an experiment, but it's been stressful because it's like, it used to be so simple when it was just me and one VA doing all the things. And it's really scary to me to have to think about growing and managing more people. Like part of me is like, no, just stay, like you are totally happy with how much money you make and how you work with people and the amount that you're working. Like maybe you don't want to grow. Maybe you don't need to make it this complicated. Maybe you just kind of stay and do what you're doing. And that might be an option for me, but it's tricky to tell. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I think that's like a lot of everyone's biggest hurdle is like team building, and also like figuring out, it's so hard because it's like, you can't imagine, like you can barely imagine hiring one next person versus being like, do I want to have a team of like 20 people? Do I want to have like 50 employees? Do I want to have 500 employees? Like, where are you going? And it feels like when you make the choice to hire just one new person, it's like stepping in that direction of like, oh my gosh, like now I have 10 people that work for me. Now I have 15. Like,
oh my God, I could never have that many people. I think also,
but one day you might, like, that's the thing is like, I said that last year. I was like, I never want to work with anyone else. And then I met Megan and I was like, okay, like if this is what working with other people feels like, I want to work with a million other people and have tons of people that work with us because it's the best thing. And I think it can be like who you find. And also like, it's weird to me at least, like how much what I thought running a team was like, how much my ideas about it have changed. And I used to just have so much fear and so much like, ugh, never. And now I'm just like, this is the most fulfilling part of my day, like hanging out with these people.
Yeah. It just adds a whole new layer of like, the work that I do is now going to involve also managing people.
Yes.
And, do I want that? And how complicated do I want this to be? And how many other people, how many moving parts do I want to this business? Yeah. Like I am all about keeping it simple. Like I like to keep things as easy and simple as possible. Like that is the name of the game for me. So it feels complex to all of a sudden have multiple moving parts and different people communicating with each other and kind of not really knowing what's going on between them because I don't need to. It's like, I don't know. So,
letting go is so scary.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know.
I totally get that. That's where like for me, with meganmins.com, that side of what I work on, it's just me, always has been. It's like very small part of what I do, but I'm like about to hire my first like contractor, like not even an exclusive, like she'll have other clients. But it's definitely like the step in that direction, and it will probably stop there. You know, maybe I'll get an assistant or something, but even for me, knowing that, there is still just this resistance and like, well, now I have to always make enough money to pay for this person. And like, that feels scary, you know? So I definitely feel like even from someone trying to go from 1 to 2, like that feels a lot. So, and I know anytime with Femtrepreneur that we expand our team, there's a lot of conversations that happen before we do. And, you know, I think we've learned a lot over the past year with hiring people, you know, the good and the bad, you know, lessons learned. I feel like even now we're learning lessons on like putting in systems that like, you know, when it was just us, like everyone had access to everything. And now it's like, oh, wait, our team is growing. Not everyone needs access to everything. And like figuring out how to even navigate that has been something we're even struggling with and trying to figure out right now. So I feel like everyone, a lot of our guests come on, and no matter where they are in that process, they feel like that's what they're struggling with, either building the team and finding the right people, or, you know, doing it the right way with your systems, or finding the first person. I think it's a big issue a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest issues, and for me right now, and for a lot of my clients too, when they're hiring like their first VA, is even knowing what kind of help you need.
Yeah.
That's why I'm at right now. I'm like, well, do I need a project manager, or do I just need like a strategist for my launches? Or do I need something like, do I need a full on part? Like, what is it that I actually need help with? And like people make a list of all the things, and I make that list, and I'm like, I still don't know what this job is. Like, what is this job? And then maybe it's multiple jobs. That gets confusing. So it's really hard to know. And it's really hard to know. And which is why I'm a huge fan of just like picking the thing or the person that you think is like the thing that you need, and then trying it. And that's kind of what I did this year. And I'm working with Hallie. You know, you guys know Hallie, right?
We love Hallie. Yeah, she's the best.
So she's gonna help me rock out my launch in January, because like super in-depth webinar launch strategy is like not my jam. It is not what I teach. It's not what I do. So I'm going to work with her just on a project basis and see how that goes. And, you know, then we'll see if that worked. And if it does, I'll work with her again. If it didn't, we'll figure out what else I need. So it's really just like, you kind of just have to be willing to try, I think.
I love that you're fearless about like you made investments that you know are an experiment. And I think there are so many people who are like, well, if I make an investment, I need a guarantee it's going to 10x my result. And like, feeling attached to that is so fearful, and it's so stressful. And like, I wish, like, Becca, teach me your ways. Because I feel always, I mean, like you talked about investing $6,000 in branding for Hey Nice Package. And like, I've never we invest in I invest in my team. I've invest, you know, more than multiple 6 figures a year in my team. I invest in we invest in Facebook ads for the first time ever in the last couple weeks. And so I'm not afraid to do it, but I think it took me this long to like feel comfortable with it, and like not feel super scared of like, what if I lose all that money? Like, and I think that is just so awesome that you're brave about it.
Yeah, I mean, because I invested a ton in Facebook ads this year, and did not see an ROI. So, you know, it's like, oh, great, lesson learned. And again, it's like that, like that doesn't mean that no Facebook ads ever work. It was just like, okay, so here's what I learned about that. I'm not someone who's like, look on the bright side of everything, but I really think with investments like that, like you'll at least learn what you don't need to do. Right. I
love that.
With investing in Hey Nice Package, it was like, okay, if this doesn't work and nobody buys this course, great. I'm creative enough that I can figure out something else I can create to hustle to like bring some clients in to make that money. Right. It's like, I just trust that like, if this doesn't work, I'll figure it out. And I figure it out. And I've had launches before I've invested in things and like didn't make the money and, you know, had to figure it out. So I think it's just really being okay with, first of all, don't go invest a crazy crap ton of money in something if you're not sure. Like with Hey Nice Package, I had tested it. I knew there was a market for it. I had hundreds of people waiting for the course to be launched. It was a pretty sure bet. If I had like 3 people who said maybe they would buy the course, maybe, there's no way I would have put that money in. So like making smart investments, being at least being critical about where you put your money, I think is really important. And just vowing that you'll make it worth it. You'll figure out what to do. If it doesn't pay off directly, you'll at least learn lessons from it about what the next step might be.
Totally. Well, I really appreciate that. I think that's awesome. And I also like your approach of like figuring out what you need as full-time support versus like a project basis support. I never had a coach before, but as our business grows beyond what I ever imagined, I feel like I don't know how $10 million a year businesses operate, but like that's the projection we're on. And I'm just like, I have no fucking clue. What the hell am we going to, like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? I don't even know. And it's like, and I feel like I have that, I'm always wondering, like, should I have a coach or like, should I have someone like helping me and like someone who's been here before? Cause I certainly don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And I think especially at any level, like if people listening to this are making like, they're going from like, oh, I made like, $15,000 to like, oh, now I'm making 80,000. Like that's a big jump. There's a huge shift. Going from six figures to like $250,000 is a big jump. Like there's so many jumps, and it doesn't matter where you are. The question is always there. It's like, well, what, like a new challenges come up no matter which level you get to. And I'm a huge fan of having support. I've never really have an ongoing like coach, but I hire people for specific times when it's like, okay, I need to strategize my plan for 2017. Who can I get on board to help me do that? All right, I need someone for my webinars. Who can I help me do that? So yeah, because you're always going to I think you can always benefit from someone who's further along than you, or at least has like worked with multiple businesses that are where you are at and understand what that growth is going to look like and like the challenges that are going to come up, because you can't foresee them.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I'm like, what is around the corner? Like, I don't know. And I don't know like and it's also hard because like, you don't know other people at that same level. You're just like, everyone is all trying to figure it out. It seems like nobody knows until you find someone who's like beyond, they're like, oh yeah, that was me 5 years ago. And they understand. But I feel like all my peers are like, no, yeah, me too. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. I think that's true. Cause I struggle to find, peers who are kind of at the level that I'm at. But it's, they're out there. I just don't, it's hard to know. And I think that's a specific problem, especially when you get to making, over six figures or multiple six figures. You kind of get to the point where you're like, not a lot of people really know what to do with this.
Right. There's so few people that get there.
Right. Like there's not a lot of, you see all the online courses for beginners and like, make your first $1,000, get your first few clients, but there's nothing that's at that level. And I think that's when you really need to hire people one-on-one to come into your business and help you. But if you're newer and starting out, I think you feel the same way, right? You're like, oh, everyone's in the same stage. Nobody knows what's going on. But there are, there's always a mentor or a coach or a strategist or a course out there that has what you need. It's just a matter of finding it. It's like ask. I crowdsource everything. All of my colleagues, I'm like, who do you go to for this? Who do you hire? Who's your VA? I go to like the coaches and strategists that I look up to, and I'm like, who do you work with? I want to work with that person. So like really aiming to do what the people ahead of me are already doing.
I love that. I feel like I have an action item, which is like, look into finding someone that can be a mentor that's like a little bit ahead of where we're at that can help us. Because honestly, most of the time I'm literally just like, well, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing at this stage in my business. So I think that's really that. And I think that you just talking about the confidence of being like, see what happens is like, okay, yeah, it doesn't mean that like, I don't have to be like, oh, if I spend X number of dollars on strategizing with this person, I need to make sure it makes like twice as much back. But it's more like organic type of investment. Like it could pay back 2 years from now and you don't even know.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think that's a lot of things with investments. Like sometimes they're not quite right for where you're at now, but later they make a lot more sense. Or maybe like within that investment, you like meet another connection, or like you're connected in a different way to like a different group and you meet someone through there. Like that can make it worth it all its own. It's like this strange byproduct. It's like people who sign up for group courses and they're like, maybe, the content wasn't what I needed, but I met like my future business partner. So like that, it works in mysterious ways. I think when you're further along, like where it sounds like you're at, where I'm at in business, there's more money to play around with. It can be really scary when you're just starting and you're like, I only make $1,000 a month. Like I can't spend $10,000 on creating this thing. So like the numbers change, and it does feel, there's some level of confidence when you know that there's consistent money coming in. But I do think just getting used to spending small bits of money when you're starting can help you get into that mindset of like experimenting and knowing that it'll come back to you. Because if you start off with fear, it's like all of your decisions are based in fear, and it's just kind of keep the cycle going. It's not good.
I wish I had done that sooner. I wish I had kind of figured out that like spending money is good for your business. It's not like this. I used to have I used to be a hoarder. Before I lived in my van, I was a hoarder. And then I became like a money hoarder, where I was like, oh, like if I let money go, then like that is going to like, that's not good. That's not what you're supposed to do with it. Like, and so I definitely struggled with like, and then when I invested in hiring Megan, that was my first like real investment in like, this is an expensive thing to have a person helping me. And like, and our revenue tripled within 30 days. And it was like, oh, like, I just wish I had gotten past the fear of investing so much sooner. It would have definitely helped me grow my business sooner.
Do you feel like you're over it now, or does it still creep in?
It still creeps in. I have it at different levels.
I still have it too.
Yeah. It happens at different things.
And it's like, aren't you past this?
No, I know. And it doesn't go away. It's almost like, well, now it's like, oh, okay, I'm totally past like investing in something that costs less than $10,000. Like that to me is like, okay, I can do that. When it gets past, like I think it's like you said, the numbers change what ratio you're looking at. If you're making $1,000 a month, like a $10,000 investment seems insane. But when you grow, everything seems like less of a big deal. And so now it's like, now I second guess things that are a $50,000 investment, whereas I used to second guess like a $2,000 investment. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like now I struggle with it at the next level of like a huge chunk of investment.
Yeah, which I think is really important for people to hear, especially like newer business owners, because it's easy to see, all these like business rock stars out there rocking it and being like, $50,000 launch and, spend X amount on my launch. And people who are like, I don't have that much money to spend on a launch. Like, what the hell, right? It's like, it's not even relevant because it seems like it's at such a different stage. So to just hear that like the number doesn't matter. The number is proportional to how much money you're making in your business. So, $300 can feel like a lot when you're only making $500 a month. Whereas, $10,000 can feel like nothing when you're making $50,000 a month. So it's, totally. I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, this was such a good conversation that just came out of this. I love talking about this. So we always like to ask our guests, we're going to start wrapping it up. But what do you think is sort of going to be the next trend in online business or online courses in the coming years? Do you have any predictions for the future? This is my favorite question.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. There's definitely I definitely see a trend now in courses, in actually creating courses and especially with all the new like amazing course platforms that are coming out and making it so easy for people to jump into courses. I almost see, because I think things are cyclical, I almost see that still being valuable, but people eventually moving more towards continuing to offer services. Because I think that there's courses are amazing and they're a super great way to scale your business and you can help lots of people at a lower price point. And there's so many reasons why they're awesome. And there's always a market for services. There's always people who want one-on-one support. And so I think that like everyone's going to be creating courses and lots of them are going to work. Lots of them are not going to work, the way that online courses do. But I have a feeling that people are going to get back to going, oh, and I also, love offering one-on-one. I work with a lot of clients who like really want to jump into creating courses and they do. And then they're like, oh, I don't really like it. Like I really actually miss connecting with people. And so I think a lot of people are going to jump into like creating things online and then realizing like actually the people connection is what I like. And I work with a lot of life coaches. So like that, that feels like it makes sense for my market. So I might be seeing that a lot more than you guys are, but
no, we talk about that a lot too, of like, there's the self-paced do-it-yourself courses, they have their place, but then people start feeling like they're missing that connection. And I know for us, like I had this like identity crisis earlier this year because I was like, our audience got so big and we had thousands and thousands of students in our courses. And I was like, I am not connected. That's why we were like, we have to do an in-person, like I need to hug these people because I was starting to feel so weird. I was starting to feel like all these people, like because I was, you have a couple hundred people in your courses and you're like, I know them by name. I know all their websites. Like I can keep track of everyone. And then it got so big that I was like, I don't even know who everyone is in the course. And I haven't like talked to them and looked them in the eye. And I feel like That was why we did the live event. And I think it's so important, and that people who have, once you have your course for a little while and it's earned enough money, you might decide that, like, you know, and that's why we did the mastermind this year too. Cause I was like, I want to talk to people one-on-one. Like, I am missing that after 4 years of selling courses and not doing any of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also a result, Mariah, too, of us growing our team. Had you been the only one answering emails and managing the chat in a webinar, you would still have that connection.
True.
But I think it was like, okay, between our team now, like, you're not answering many emails. You're not really, and you're doing the webinar. You're less, you know, you're not responding to every chat thing. So I feel like we had to create a new way for you to connect. And like, having the Facebook group has been like a game changer for allowing you to have that connection without it being like, I'm in the inbox having to answer customer service emails. You know, it kind of allows you to have the engagement that you felt like you were missing in a more fun way.
Totally. Yeah. It's so important. I think that's so true. Yeah, absolutely. So tell our listeners where they can find you. And I know that you have an awesome freebie for our listeners.
I'm on Facebook all the time, unfortunately. It's so bad. I'm like, don't even go to my website, just go to Facebook.
Well, that's good. That's where you're at.
I have a Facebook group too. I'm in your Facebook group, which is awesome, by the way. And I send all my clients to it who are like, courses. I'm like, just go over here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I have a Facebook group. You can find it if you go to the uncagedlife.com/community. You can find it there. Tons of coaches. Like I seem to have a coaching niche, and that's like the background that I come from. So that makes sense. But life coaches, business coaches, health coaches, coaches of any kind. So that's a great place to connect. And I have a 3-month, it's called the 3-month hustle. I know people don't like the word hustle. I'm a fan of the word hustle. I'm totally okay
hustle.
Yeah, I love hustle. So the 3-month hustle is basically a checklist of like, here's what you should be focusing on in what order in your business. And it's really awesome if anyone listening to this is kind of at the stage where they're like, man, it's like creating online courses sounds awesome, but like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing yet. Like, who are my people and what is my business? This is a great resource to kind of help you make sure you've got all of those things in place so that you can actually go and create courses and start selling things to people. The biggest question I get asked is like, I got 1,000 things to do and I have no idea what order to do them in. So this is a list of like, here's the order to do things in. Pretty basic, super simple to follow, but just kind of my take on like, here's what's most important first, second, third, and then you're ready to, to dive into hustling and selling and creating.
I love that. And they can go to the uncagedlife.com/thefemshow to get that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And if you're listening, we'll have all the links for you in the show notes. So don't worry about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Becca. This was such a good conversation. Like, I feel like I have so many ideas, and I really appreciate your take on investing in your business. I feel like I have this like little confidence to kind of go out and I've been there's like always things coming up in our business, always opportunities. I always feel on the fence about them. So I feel like excited now. And I really, really appreciate your take on all of this.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's super fun to chat. And I love that there's 2 of you on this podcast. It's super fun.
We try to have fun.
We try. If it's evening, I'll have a glass of wine instead of my cup of coffee usually, but that's okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Becca. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
We'd love to hear from you. What's something you've invested in your business that totally scared you but has ended up being completely worth it? Be sure to leave your answer in the comments below. And don't forget to download Becca's free checklist. You can find the link below this video.
If this episode was helpful for you, be sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and hit the like button. And if you want to discuss this video with us and our awesome community of ambitious online entrepreneurs, make sure to join our free Facebook group at thefemshow.com/community. We will see you in the next episode.